We're going to be looking at the Human Rights Day. Every 10th day of December yearly is always commemorated, looking at the United Nations, of course, Declaration of Human Rights and the need to protect the rights of the citizenry. We call it the fundamental human rights. And we look at the need to do this, irrespective or regardless of color, race, language, birth, whatever, even political association or opinions being held. The human rights of every human being should be protected. And that's what we're about today. And joining us on this conversation, we have former President of the Student Union Government, and also President Emeritus of the Ijo Youth Council, and former President of NAS, Benin Chapter, the immediate Capone. And of course, he's also the CMD Rahim Medical Outreach, Dr. Chris Ekio, member of the National Association of Sea Dogs, aka Pirate Confraternity. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, welcome.
And next, joining us via Zoom is a legal practitioner and, of course, a human rights activist, Matthew Edarese. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Phillips. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's kickstart with what we have on the ground. We have issues about the human rights and, of course, abuses, of course. So what do you see as what human rights comprise of and what you see as abuses in Nigeria?
Okay, so this is a country that has subscribed to the United Nations Declaration and has its own Human Rights Commission, well established with an act, and has provided for freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom to assemble, right to education, right to health, and all of that. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. We are still far, far below what it is to be a country where human rights is respected. And you can see that from the day-to-day actions, first from the political leaders. So the one that really creates problem for human rights is the government itself, because most of the people that interfere with the process of human rights are agencies of government. So we talk about the police, the military, the judiciary itself. And then you talk about corrupt politicians, because where people have no right to economic justice, that's also fundamental error in the human right, because economic justice, social justice, and equity to livelihood is one of the components of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. In this country, it seems to me that certain class of those justice, economic justice, is for exclusively the preserve of the political class and those who can bulldoze their way into it. But it's not supposed to be so. So if you look at the index of human rights issues in terms of economic justice, we're not there. If you look at it in terms of the judicial system, it seems also to a large extent that those who can pay for justice tend to get justice. So if you do not have the resources to buy your way through the other good lawyers who can buy their way through the judges, you are likely all the time to be in prison for the things that you've not done. So we're not there yet. The conditions of even people awaiting trial is in defilement with what should be for those who are not guilty yet. So that's a problem in our country. The health sector, it's the same thing. People are supposed to have a right to good living, and good living and good environment can only provide good health. The environment itself, the environmental laws in terms of gas flaring in this country is disrespected. So you have people living in a polluted environment, getting sick and can't find health care. The way we do things here is more of lip service to it. And I think that if we are subscribed to something that's globally accepted, then we should look at it. Now, the worst part of it is political a right to assemblage. You really truly cannot assemble if you do not submit your intent in line with the government of the day's position. So people cannot aggregate and say, okay, we have a right. Look, you have a right actually to rebel against a bad government. The recent one is the End Bad Governance debate. There was nothing wrong with that. Citizens are saying that well, the government is bad, you need to end bad governance. Not end the government. It's a phrase. End bad governance. Governance is about leading people, end that kind of style. But what happened? It was such that they put people behind bars for trying to say that things are going bad. And, we can only shift this blame gear until we get to the cliff and then we'll all crash.
Right. Okay, so Dr. Chris, you said a whole lot of things regarding human rights and some of the basic rights that are being trampled upon right now in the country. But I'll love you talk a little bit about the significance of today. Why important is it that we get to, celebrate and mark today being the 10th day in the month of December 2024, tagged the World Human Rights Day?
Yeah, so today became significant because, human rights thing didn't even start about 1948, as it's been talked about. As far back as 1215, there was a Magna Carta Charter where Magna Carta decided to look, people have to have some certain fundamental rights. Now, going through history, we find out that those positions about human rights started, and it's why even the slave trade was abolished, because people need to start living as equals. So about 1948, of course, you know that the United Nations decided that on that day, 10th of December, which is today in history, they adopted that charter and said, look, every nation should subscribe to this, and most nations of the world did. So it became a day that was declared by the United Nations that every nation must respect. So as we're here talking globally, everybody's looking at it as a day where we review the issues of people's rights, and then we voice and we do a lot of advocacy. I expect to see the human rights activists in the country doing advocacy. I expect judges to today free people that they can't prove guilty. They've been on a waiting trial and say, look, you can go scot-free today because there's no proof. I expect the police everybody to play a role in terms of celebrating today, giving people the freedom to express. I expect the unions, the trade unions, to today rise up and say, hey, this that's happening in our system is not right, but all that's not happening. Why is it so? Because of what I said earlier, everybody is circumspect and careful not to be the victim of the authoritarianism that we have in our system subtly.
Brilliant articulation. Well, you made mention of a lot, and I think that's where we're going to be joined by the legal practitioner, Matthew Ederese. Now, you heard what he said. We seem to be falling short of getting justice in respect of protecting human rights. And we see it here where the term says, our rights, our future, and right now. Do you see the policies of the government? Do you see the laws of the government, the attention of the government of Nigeria as protecting these rights? Or will you say it's as a result of the provisions of the Constitution falling short to tackle this? Matthew.
There is no insufficient in respect of human rights. The provision in the Constitution are very elaborate. The laws are there that stipulates protection and safeguarding of human rights of citizens in Nigeria. But then, the problem has always been with the enforcement of these laws and the artificial barricade erected by those in power against the enforcement of these rights. For instance, there is freedom of association, there is freedom of speech, there is freedom of movement. But most times, the government of the day, at every given point in time, find a way to circumvent these rights. They go against people's right to assemble freely, or the right to protest against government policies. You see the agents of the state unleashing violence on peaceful protesters, as it happened at Lekki toll gates during the NSAS protest. But the problem is not about whether the laws are there. As I've said earlier, they are even elaborate and sufficiently provided for. But the problem is never allowing this law to breathe. The government appears to survive on the strength of repression of these fundamental rights of citizens. And this has been the challenge.
Look at what he also said as regards the judiciary. He's always said that the last hope of the common man is the judiciary. Now we still have, issues of human rights abuses, delayed justice in the judiciary. What will you say is responsible for this? Because for us to tackle it, we need the full strength of the judiciary. How do we improve on the processes?
We have witnessed we have witnessed situations in this country where even when the court grant bail to person standing trial, the executive arm of government will refuse to comply with those court orders. It has become a tradition to disregard court orders when it affects those who have issues with the government. So when the court made pronouncement and the government refused to obey, there is a dilemma. You wouldn't blame the courts. The judge will perform its role to make orders. The power to enforce those orders falls on the executive arm of government. And in most cases, when it affects their interest, they simply ignore it. That is a major challenge.
Let's get to you. You are a medical doctor. Good to know you are here. And let's look at how rights of the citizens can transform into gaining educational benefits, of course, health benefits as regards this. Because some have said that we seem to also be denied of our rights as citizens of the country as regards health.
So I happen to be in the generation of people who enjoyed a few of Ambozali's policy on free health and free education in my early education and primary school and all of that. And I think it's doable. This country is endowed with the resources to at least say 0 to 5 free healthcare everywhere. A federal government policy to do that, 0 to 5 or even 0 to 16. And then you need to have a health, you have the National Health Insurance program that should be able to cater for 0 to 16. And then say probably from 65 till old age, you also have, so the working classes between 18 and 65 can pay insurance for their health care. So that's possible. But the problem again is about fundamental human rights issues not being taken care of. What we've seen in the governance structure and governance in the country is about self-amassing of wealth. It's about how do you explain someone owning 753 bungalows? What do you want to do with it? Very highly placed government official with the trust of a country economy where he's supposed to provide social justice and social net. That money could have been invested in social security for citizens, but it's been diverted to something else.
As allegations have it.
Yeah, well, that's the FCC saying it. So until it's proven, but again, that is another long, tough one because there's resources to block justice and all of that. The system is, if we talked about freedom to protest, if you cannot protest oppression, nobody will hear it. The human rights activists are busy advocating, and when you talk too much, they pick you up and put you in a silent cell. That's the kind of country we run. It's just that the difference between now and the military era is that the politicians know how to also pay stupid people around the corner to help them advocate. No, that's the truth. That's the right word. If you are oppressed and you are being paid to fight against the oppressed, you must be stupid to do that because you suffer the same thing that the other man is suffering, and the man is speaking on your behalf, and you are throwing stones at him. Something must be truly wrong with you. That's why I use the word stupid. It's not an insult, it's a description of the person. Because it's only someone who doesn't know his problem that would fight another who is helping him fix the problem. The average citizen understands that right to life is even a very expensive commodity in Nigeria, just to live. Because walking through the street, a stray bullet can hit you. Your security is not guaranteed. You can't travel on the road without praying and fasting in this country. It's not supposed to be so.
But there are insurance schemes.
That's the point I'm making. So with all these things,
you at the state level and at the federal level.
With all of
but how many are captured in the bracket?
Even when
most especially those who are not even working.
Even when you are captured in the bracket, the conditions ab initio set down for you to access the scheme is not sustainable. So let's take a simple health insurance program, because I'm in the health sector. You are insured, so you walk into a clinic, you need to be treated. The clinic providing the facility has been told you cannot treat more than Panadol and anti-malaria. It creates a problem. So it means that even when they say there is a freedom to speak, you have a bar. Freedom to good health, you have a bar. Freedom to justice, you have a bar. So if we are going to deal with human rights, it has to be total. It says that people should move freely, should have access to own properties anywhere they exist, should have access to economic justice, should have access to free speech, should even have access to free right to worship. My brother, you can't even worship proudly as a Christian in Sokoto without scare.
or as a traditional worshiper in Benin without the church bouncing on you. There's this hook on everybody trying to oppress everybody. And you know why? It's a system thing. So when the man upstairs oppresses the man in the middle starts oppressing the one downstairs. Right. The one downstairs, if you find somebody down there, he passes on the oppression. So it's a mental state of disorder that we have passed on because of the lack of human rights.
Indeed, speaking about lack of human rights, I'd love us to talk right now about the role of the National Orientation Agency in all of this, especially regarding persons being informed, because I feel like when you're informed, you make informed decisions.
So I'm convener of the Integration Summit Group Nigeria, so we'll try to see how we can create proper integration of people and societies within themselves, because even though we live together in a littoral area, we're not integrated. You could have neighbors you don't talk to. So we'll try to advocate for proper integration. We have severally tried to reach the National Orientation Agency to provide a platform for that discourse nationally. They don't talk to you. They don't even have budgets, according to them.
Do you think they're even effective at this point?
That's what I'm saying. They've gone to sleep because they don't even have budgets. Perhaps the managers of the agency do not know how to present their case before the National Assembly, so they just have recurrent expenditure. They can't promote advocacy. The Human Rights Commission itself has its own effort. The man at the helm of affairs usually may get there because the president wants him to get there. So you cannot speak too much about what is right or what is wrong. It's very calculated.
You've raised the point, and at this time we have to swing the pendulum to the barrister. Matthew, you heard what he said. Everything seems to fall on the government, because if the government must do the needful to make sure that these rights are protected. Now, when it happens, or if it happens, that the citizens' rights is being violated by law enforcement agents and, of course, the government authorities, how should such a citizen advocate or seek for redress? Matthew, are you there? Matthew, are you there, please?
Can you hear me?
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I said the reality is this. Once the rule of law is not obeyed, is set aside, there's always going to be a problem. The rule of law is the backbone and the defender of the rights of citizens. Both the government and the citizens ought to be under the law, under the rule of law. The government is not above the law because they are enforcing the law. The very moment you now place the government above the law and place the citizen under the law, there is already a challenge, fundamental challenge. Because the laws ordinarily should govern and regulate the society. It should regulate and define the powers of government and the rights of citizens. When the government or those authorities overstep their bounds, the rule of law cannot thrive under that circumstance or atmosphere. You are not supposed to beg the government or those in authority to obey the law or to enforce the law. Only tyranny will prevail under that circumstance, where those in law, those in power, see the law as below them. The very minute a society condones a situation whereby those in authority see themselves as operating above the law, there is tendency to wander towards authoritarianism, dictatorship, and even fascism. In the absence of operating above the law, the rule of law narrowly should govern every conduct of human beings in any society at any given time.
Right. We are looking at the remedies now, solutions to the problems that we've enlisted. And I asked, if the citizens' rights is being violated by the government or by a law enforcement agent, how should that citizen seek redress?
And privileges is trampled upon, should approach the courts to enforce its fundamental human rights. But the problem is this: several times, when people whose rights have been trampled upon approaches the court to seek redress, and court have made pronouncements. We have seen a sad situation where the people in authority, the agents of government, security agencies, they simply disobey court orders with impunity. Once that happens, what next?
Okay. Well, let's also stretch it a bit further because we have issues as regards how some who feel marginalized, like children and women, what are the remedies, legal remedies, to protect such marginalized sect of citizens of the country?
The law is no respecter of anybody. It makes a comprehensive provision for every human being, whether a toddler, an adult, or any other person. So the law does not select who to protect and who not to protect. It's an umbrella of protection over everybody that lives in a given space or territory. The right of children, the right of women, the right of male and female, they are provided for under the law. And there is no provision that allows those rights to be trampled upon. Such a situation is a violation, and every violation should be met with a sanction. And legal remedy is the only way. And the courts are supposed to be the arbiter.
We're looking at the aspect of human rights being today commemorated as Human Rights Day. And we've been speaking with Dr. Chris Ekio and, of course, Matthew Edalese.
Dr. Chris, I feel like there's still a whole lot of things to talk about regarding human rights activism in Nigeria. But just before we even talk about activism in Nigeria, there's a viral video right now trending online where we did get to see a woman slapping and just, bashing on this particular FRSC officials, and a lot of persons, Nigerians, have come out to react to it because oftentimes we get to see them trampling upon our rights. And it makes me remember something human rights lawyer Femi Falana did say, where he said that where your right stops is where another person's rights begin. So how do we marry all of this?
Okay, so we have a violent society. People are on the ledge. There's anxiety, there's depression. I used to say the rest of us living here are the abnormal ones because the system is on auto in abnormality. So what you see happening there is an outburst from a woman who is already frustrated and tired of the system, and you just push the wrong button and pop, you move that out there, and she's just spontaneously reacting. It is wrong to hit an officer of the law, whether you're a male or a female. It is wrong to confront someone serving the country in that capacity. But then, everybody seems to be angry and upset with the situation, and some willing to die, have suicidal behaviors. If you do the mental health scaling of people in the country, be shocked how many people are living in anxiety and depression and frustration, but are just pulling through. So I'd say that it's unfortunate it has happened, and I appreciate the fact that the officer understood what was happening and did not try to fight back, but step back. He has the right now to prosecute the woman formally, first for breaking the traffic law and then for assault. That is where his rights can commence from. And at NAS, the National Assembly, we do that every day, advocating that people must not, physicality is something we abhor. You have no right whatsoever to hit another. In fact, it is a very serious offense to even hit a man, let alone your wife or a woman. So what we'll say is you speak out. You seek fundamental rights by going through the process and follow it through. And yesterday we were at Ring Road championing that cause, asking people to know that they have rights, and if you think that your right is being trampled upon, follow the process. You can report a crime or an assault or something first to the police. You can seek a legal advice and then take a lawyer and prosecute to the court. Those are the processes. What I've said earlier is that even though that is what is in the Constitution, the government of the day, it's itself the problem of the citizens because it puts lacunas and stumbling blocks in all these processes.
Let's look at student unionism. You were president of the student union government way back at University of Benin. Now, let's look at the level of unionism, because that, again, will also be measured, most especially when, the SUG is always there to protect the rights of the citizens. Do you see that level of unionism still in existence in the Nigerian student body?
Well, the scenario is an irony. In my era, people before me said that union has died. But I remember vividly that we could advocate. There was a price hike in fuel that we stopped. Basanjo wanted to do that, and we said it was impossible. We went to Lagos, mobilized students. We then went around nationwide, and they didn't allow that. Shomole was Labour NLC president then, and we stopped it. Obasanjo again wanted to privatize student hostel. We stopped it. Lucky was doing something that we didn't want. We went out, we stopped it. The university had certain policies, anti-student, we stopped it. But I think over the time and long after us, the university system has become like Nigeria in itself, the microcosm of the macrocosm, foisting on students the kind of leadership that the university wants in itself. That in itself is a system that weakens even the university authority because you don't have a voice to rise up against draconian policies of governance or of leadership. So yes, there is a decadence in unionism and even in activism because there are a lot of pocket activists who just advocate so they can be paid or they can be called to negotiate. They don't do it because they have the trust of the citizens. They just want to be in the face of the TV, make some noise, and then when they are called in the dark room, they take money and they go to sleep. In 2007, the crisis in the Niger Delta was alarming and tearing. The national production for oil was 700,000 barrels, again 2.4 million barrels per day. The country was shaking. I became president of the Jury Council then. Militants was everywhere in the Niger Delta. The kidnap was at the highest. And I knew there was a vicious circle. I took steps to engage the militants, their leaders, and then the government created a platform where we, militants, our team as the Joint Council, and the government reached a consensus to change the narrative. Government made promises to the Niger Delta people. Unfortunately, once we got the violence to stop, they started paying bribes to the violent people, and they refused to do the things they have kept. So it's like that in every way. Government or authorities, people in power, trying to subvert the processes that will allow for economic justice and freedom.
Okay. Well, let's get back to you, Matthew. You are a member of the NBA. Now, we are looking at remedies, how to salvage the problems or tackle the issues headlong. What do you see as the role of the NBA in making sure that, there's no erosion of justice, in making sure that there's a bridge between the government and the people, those who govern and the governed, in protecting these rights?
The NBA is an association of lawyers or legal practitioners. It's a professional body. It is part of the society. NBA is not an island on its own. If there's institutional rots and foundational problems, the NBA, like every other person, are like victims of a very, very decaying system. NBA will operate as a body when it comes to issues of public interest. They could lend a voice in condemnation of any infraction by agents of the states. But then, if the NBA made pronouncement condemning subversive acts that tends to erode the rights of citizens or endanger sale, it ends there. Unless the government listens or the agents of government are brought to justice by the same government, it becomes a song in the ear of the oppressor. Infraction that does not attract sanction becomes a pastime. There is nothing to deter a transgressor from continuing transgression if there is no consequence for bad behavior. That is where the judiciary comes in. The lawyer could argue all the cases, tender every argument, and even facts. And the courts will rule or pronounce on dispute before it. After the judicial pronouncement comes enforcement of court judgments and orders. That is where, again, the government will come in to play a very critical role. And should they now refuse to do what the Constitution expects of them, to obey the law or enforce judicial decisions, we hits another brick wall. It becomes motion without movement. Until we make the people in power to see the need to operate under the rule of law, we continue to move in a circle. NBA will not do magic. They will do their bit. But those in authority, those who run the system, owe a duty to the Constitution and to humanity to obey the law at all times, no matter who's
Let's look at the judiciary. For the judiciary to perform its role, make sure that justice is done, not delayed, not denied, it needs to be truly independent. Can you say it is?
The independence of the judiciary is constitutionally provided for. It's a necessity if we must uphold the rule of law. The court or the judges, they are the arbiter. In a situation where the arbiter has no say, or his say has no effect, what do you expect? You expect the triumph of tyranny over justice. We saw what happened to Justice Honoria, the #1 judicial officer in the country. He was humiliated. His right was stripped of him by a judge of an inferior court under the prompting of those in authority then. It was an aberration that prevailed then. But what could he do? He was booted out of office on the strength of a judgment that is not even known to law, that is not provided for. Because the court that issued that pronouncement then has no jurisdiction to even look at that matter. But because those in authority pushed their way through the corridor of illegality, Honoria became a victim. So if the Supreme Court, the CJ of the Federation, will be so humiliated and stripped of his rights, that tells us the danger that operates when the rule of law is not allowed to prevail. The remedy is obedience and submission to the rule of law by all concerned, those in power, those in government and the governed. We should also subject ourselves to the rule of law.
Okay.
That is the only remedy.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Well, let's come back to you as we gradually round off. You have served in different capacities, as president of the students' body, and of course, as the Ijaw Youth Council president, and of course, immediate capon of the National Association of CDOG, otherwise known as Pride Confraternity Benin chapter. Now, some have seen this as maybe a secret court, but you've gone all through this experience. Now, what do you see as your impactful experience in order to bring about a bridge or close the gap, between the government and the people as regards the rights being protected?
All right, so to put it straight, the Pride Confraternity is a confraternity as stated.
Okay.
Confraternity is not a secret court, and we don't do things in secret. So we're open. We have an anchor point in the public space where both members and non-members can come and interact, socialize. It's open to everybody. So we do advocacy to the public. We do free medical missions. We try to bridge the gap of governance, and we speak truth to power. Perhaps that's the part that the government may not like and say these people are radical in their thought process. But that's our laws, that you must change moribund convention. You must do what is right at all times. You must respect every human being and give them a space to exist. So
that's to the question.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
But now, to the core issues that you've raised, I believe that, like the barrister said, if we have a medical balance, if you treat the symptoms of a situation, you can't treat the disease. You need to go to the root cause. Use the symptoms to identify the root cause. Yeah. Now, all this kind of lacunas we've seen that are trampling on the fundamental rights of people is based on the root cause. And what's the root cause? The root cause is those who are fundamentally in place to enforce those things that have been written and adopted by them. Government. And who is the government? You and I. Because the people in government were once like you and me, but we already have a decadence in our moral, social moral, That we have a mindset that when we get into power, it's not about freedom for people, it's not about social justice for people, it's not about existence, it's about oppression. So the oppressor in this case is the government, and we need to deal with that. It's said about judicial system. Once government begin to interfere with justices of the system, they will be scared to dispense justice because they want to protect their job and they want to exist and live. Right. When they do the same thing to the police become a tool for victimization of the common man. So the ordinary citizen is always down there being trampled upon. A politician takes for himself all the security that needs to secure citizens.
Now, what do you think is the way forward in all of this?
I'm going there. So when you now calculate all of these pockets of privatization of the real estate of a country, the way forward is for citizens at that high place, which is the root cause, to shake off that and go back to the rudiment of being sincere to their citizens. Citizens at the high place are political office holders, the ones in authority who should help the ones who are out of authority to have access.
You are referring to those who you say they are oppressors?
Yes.
So how would they how would they change the process? Because they seem to be benefiting from it.
Yeah. So we will get to a point where the system will cleanse itself, and that's what I'm afraid of. When the oppressor continue to oppress the oppressed, there will be a time where the oppressed will rise up against the oppressed. And that time is not what we want in our country.
Don't you think we've seen that already, especially with this recent video we saw with that woman? I'm sure she had been pushed to the wall because she had to retaliate the way
it's like a transferred aggression.
So those are pockets of the 90s of what the bigger picture can be when a country... I used to say that we're on the road to like Rwanda again in a country. What was saying now happened between 1979 and 83, and we saw the outcome. So we need to be careful as leaders, people who are custodian of authority, to manage the situation and take the pulse of citizens like that woman and so many in the marketplaces, in their homes, farmers, everybody. Because the day the masses will rise, they're a majority. These people that are doing the oppression, they're not more than 10,000 total of 200 million people. So you need to understand the metrics. The day the rest say, okay, we want to die now, let us die. These 10,000 people will be swallowed. And that chaotic situation is what that 10,000 people need to know now to the human rights that they need to advise themselves because they are the oppressors to stop oppressing. After all, it was the slavers that decided that it was time not to slave people again. The slaves couldn't take that decision.
Okay.
So the slavers did that. So the oppressors need to know that they have oppressed enough. In fact, I ask myself, I haven't stolen so much money. Won't you stop stealing and just bring the remaining for the other people? It's a problem.
Thank you very much. Well, let's get to you, Matthew Edarese, for your closing remarks. Most especially as we even had the aspect where during the End Bad Governance, some underage children were thrown behind the bars, and it's quite alarming. How do we tackle this way forward for Nigeria's rights to be protected, looking at the citizens?
We must continue to push the advocacy against the reign of impunity by those in the authority. It is the law that created the offices they occupy, the public offices, that create them, or the offices. If they have no regard for law, they have no right to expect the citizen to have regard for their offices. Because it is the law that provides for the creation of the office and also the creation of their responsibility and duties towards the citizens. It is a two-way traffic. The people in power must subject themselves to the rule of law before they expect the citizens to also obey the law. You can't be lawless and claim to be enforcing the law. It is an irony that we must quickly fix before it unfixes the system. No system can run outside the law and stand in its good stead for too long. Failed states start with impunity by those in authority. And once the system fails, everybody becomes casualty in the long run. So let us try to protect the system.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew Edarese, a legal practitioner who joined us via Zoom from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And also big thanks to you, Chris Akio, for taking time to be part of this. And we can only say we wish you a beautiful day ahead of you and continue in the advocacy that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.